I woke to silence and the distant hum of an engine fading into nothing. The house felt hollow. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with a feeling I couldn't name yet. Then I heard it, or rather, I didn't hear it. No footsteps, no voices calling my name, no last-minute scramble to gather bags or check passports. I sat up slowly, the sheets falling away from my shoulders. The clock on my nightstand read 6:47 a.m. They were supposed to leave at 7. They were supposed to wake me at 6. My phone screen was blank, no missed calls, no texts. I walked to the hallway on bare feet, my heart beginning to pound in a way that made my ribs ache. The silence was suffocating. I pushed open the door to my sister Lily's room. Empty, bed me. Her suitcase? Gone. I moved faster now, my breath shallow. My parents' room? Empty. Closet half open, hangers askew where luggage had been pulled down in a hurry. The living room? Nothing. No note on the counter, no message on the fridge, just the faint smell of coffee and the ghost of their presence. They forgot me. The realization settled into my bones like ice water. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an oversight. They had packed. They had checked everything. They had left, and they hadn't thought of me once. I stood in the center of the living room, my arms wrapped around myself, and felt something inside me crack. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, irreversible fracture that I knew would never heal the same way. This was supposed to be our family trip to the coast. 2 weeks of ocean air and laughter and time together. I had been looking forward to it for months. I had requested time off work. I had bought a new swimsuit. I had imagined us walking along the beach at sunset, the way we used to when I was small and things were simpler. But they forgot me. I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling. My phone buzzed once. I grabbed it, hope flaring painfully in my chest. It was Lily, a photo. She was grinning in the passenger seat of the car, our mother laughing beside her in the back, our father's hand visible on the steering wheel. The caption read, "Road trip starts now. No mention of me. No wish you were here." No realization that someone was missing. I stared at that photo until my vision blurred. Then, I set the phone down and let the numbness take over. This wasn't the first time. It was never the first time. It was just the moment that made all the other moments impossible to ignore. Lily had always been the bright one, the easy one, the one who made our parents smile without trying. She was beautiful in an effortless way, long dark hair that always fell perfectly, a laugh that filled rooms, a charm that made people lean in when she spoke. She was studying law at a prestigious university. She had a boyfriend our parents adored. She had a future that gleamed like polished silver. And I was just Isabella, the older daughter who worked a steady but unremarkable job, the one who was too quiet at family dinners, the one who tried too hard and still fell short, the one they loved, I supposed, in the way you love something familiar but unexciting. I had spent years trying to earn the same light in their eyes that Lily received by simply existing. I had worked overtime to help pay for her tuition when money was tight. I had cancelled plans to drive her to events. I had celebrated her victories as if they were my own, because I thought that was what family meant. But they forgot me. I sat there as the morning light grew stronger through the windows. My phone buzzed again. More photos, Lily at a rest stop. Lily holding up coffee cups. Our parents smiling beside her. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The hurt was too deep for tears. It sat in my stomach like a stone, heavy and cold and indigestible. The photos kept coming throughout the day. Lily at a roadside diner, laughing at something our father said. My mother's hand reaching into frame to tuck a strand of hair behind Lily's ear. The dashboard decorated with snacks and drinks. Every image a knife I hadn't known I was waiting to feel. I tried to go about my day. I made coffee that tasted like nothing. I sat at my laptop and stared at work emails without reading them. I showered and dressed in clothes I didn't remember choosing. The motions were automatic, but I wasn't really there. I was stuck in that moment of understanding, replaying it over and over. They had walked past my bedroom door. They had loaded the car in the driveway just below my window. They had driven away down the street where I had learned to ride a bike, where I had waited for the school bus every morning for 12 years, and not once had any of them thought to check if I was coming. By evening, I was sitting in the dark. I hadn't bothered to turn on the lights as the sun set. My phone continued its cruel rhythm of notifications. A video now. Lily pointing the camera at the ocean, the sound of waves and my mother's voice saying, "It's even more beautiful than I remembered." I had remembered too. I had remembered it every day for months. I had counted down to this trip like a child counting down to a birthday. I had thought it would fix something I couldn't name. I had thought that 2 weeks together would remind them that I existed, that I mattered, that I was more than just the responsible one who held things together while they celebrated Lily's light. But they forgot me. The thought circled back, always landing in the same place. I could feel myself beginning to hollow out from it. It wasn't just the trip. It was every parent-teacher conference they had missed because Lily had a recital the same night. It was every graduation where the photos focused on her, and I appeared in the background, out of focus. It was every family dinner where I served the food I had cooked, while they toasted Lily's latest achievement. I had made myself small for so long that I had finally disappeared completely. By the second day, I had stopped checking my phone. By the third day, I had stopped pretending to work. I moved through the house like a ghost, and the irony wasn't lost on me that I had always been one. They had just finally made it official. On the fourth day, my phone rang. Not a text, an actual call. My mother's name on the screen. I stared at it, watching it ring and ring. My thumb hovered over the answer button. Part of me wanted to hear her voice. Part of me wanted her to explain, to apologise, to acknowledge what they had done. But a larger part of me knew that she wouldn't. She would ask why I hadn't been responding. She would sound confused, maybe even slightly annoyed. She wouldn't understand that I was waiting for her to understand. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was exactly what I expected. "Isabella, honey, why haven't you been responding? We've been worried. Lily's been trying to share photos with you and you haven't even liked them. Is everything okay? Call us back when you get this. Love you." Worried, as if I had been the one to disappear. Love you. Words that had once meant everything and now meant nothing at all. I deleted the message without listening to it a second time. The days blurred together after that. I went to work because I didn't know what else to do. My co-workers asked if I had enjoyed my vacation, and I said yes with a smile that felt like it belonged to someone else. I ate because my body demanded it. I slept in fits and starts, waking up at odd hours with my heart racing and my hands clenched into fists. Something was changing inside me. Not healing, not acceptance. Something deeper and more fundamental. I could feel myself pulling away from my own life, disconnecting from the person I had been. It was like watching myself from a great distance, seeing clearly for the first time how much of my existence had been built around making space for other people. I had spent 27 years being the reliable one, the one who could be counted on, the one who never made waves or demanded attention. I had thought it made me good, strong, worthy. It had only made me invisible. On the 8th day, I woke up feeling strange. My body was heavy in a way that had nothing to do with tiredness. My vision kept blurring at the edges, and my chest felt tight, like I was breathing through water. I called in sick to work. I made it to the couch before my legs gave out. I lay there for hours, drifting in and out of a grey half-consciousness. At some point, I realised I should probably call someone, but the only people I would have called were hundreds of miles away, posting photos of sunsets and seafood dinners and family bonding that didn't include me. The thought made me laugh, and the laugh turned into something that might have been crying. And then I was just lying there, staring at the ceiling and feeling my heart beat, slow and stutter and struggle. I thought about the girl I had been, the one who had believed that love was something you earned through sacrifice, the one who had thought that if she just tried hard enough, gave enough, bent far enough, she would finally be seen. I thought about how wrong she had been. The ceiling was spinning now. Or maybe I was. It was hard to tell. My phone was somewhere nearby, buzzing with messages I would never read. The light was fading, though I couldn't tell if it was evening or if it was something else entirely. My last coherent thought was that this seemed about right. Quiet, alone, forgotten even in my ending. Then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was 17 again. The knowledge was immediate and absolute. I didn't need to check a calendar or look in a mirror. I knew it the way you know your own name, the way you know which way is up, even in complete darkness. I was lying in my childhood bedroom, the bed with its faded blue comforter, the desk cluttered with textbooks and notes, the posters on the walls of bands I had loved and places I had wanted to see. The morning light coming through the curtains in that particular way it only did in summer. I sat up slowly. My hands were different, younger. The calluses I had earned from years of cooking and cleaning were gone. My body felt lighter, less weighted down by exhaustion and disappointment. Even my hair was different, longer than I had worn it in years. I should have been panicking. I should have been questioning my sanity or looking for explanations. But instead, I felt calm. Calmer than I had felt in years, maybe ever. Because I understood. I had been given something impossible. Something people dreamed about but never truly believed in. I had been given a second chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. I got out of bed and walked to the mirror above my dresser. The face that looked back at me was mine, but younger. 17-year-old Isabella with clear eyes and smooth skin and an expression that still held hope. She didn't know yet what the next 10 years would bring. She didn't know about the slow accumulation of small abandonments that would eventually crush her. But I did. I knew exactly which choices would lead to that empty house and that forgotten morning and that quiet, lonely death. And I knew exactly how to make different ones. I reached for my phone, an older model I hadn't seen in a decade, and checked the date. June 14th, 10 years in the past. 3 years before the trip that would break me. 3 years to build a different life. I was already planning. The first change came that very afternoon. I was sitting at the kitchen table, actually doing homework for once instead of rushing through it to help with dinner, when Lily came downstairs. She was 16, still growing into the beauty that would define her, still learning how to wield the charm that would make our parents orbit around her like planets around the sun. "Isabella, can you drive me to Emma's house?" she asked, already pulling on her shoes. "Her mum can bring me home later." In my first life, I had said yes immediately. I had always said yes. I had dropped my homework, grabbed my keys, and spent 40 minutes in traffic to take her somewhere she could have easily gotten to by bus. This time, I didn't even look up from my textbook. "No, I am busy." The silence that followed was thick with her surprise. "What?" I said, "No, I'm studying." "But I need a ride," she said, her tone sharpening with the beginnings of indignation. "Take the bus," I said calmly. "Or ask Mum. Mom's at work, and the bus takes forever." I finally looked up at her, and something in my expression made her take a step back. "Then I guess you'll have to figure it out. I'm not your personal driver." She stared at me for a long moment, her mouth slightly open in shock. Then she turned and left, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. I heard her bedroom door slam. I returned to my homework and felt nothing but a quiet satisfaction. Over the following days and weeks, I implemented more changes. Small ones at first, testing the boundaries of this new life. When my mother asked me to skip my art class to help set up for Lily's birthday party, I told her no and went to class. When my father assumed I would give up my Saturday to babysit my cousin so he and my mother could attend one of Lily's debate tournaments, I told him I had plans and kept them. Each time they looked at me with variations of the same confusion. Who was this Isabella who said no? Who was this daughter who had boundaries and plans of her own? I was the Isabella who knew how this story ended. I was the Isabella who had already died once from making myself disappear. I was the Isabella who would not make that mistake again. I focused on school with an intensity I had never managed in my first life. I knew which teachers appreciated effort and which ones responded to creativity. I knew which assignments were worth perfecting and which ones required just enough to maintain a good grade. I optimized everything, leveraging knowledge from a future that would never happen. My grades climbed. Teachers who had barely noticed me before started calling on me in class, intrigued by my sudden participation. Counsellors who had been preparing to suggest state schools started mentioning scholarships to private universities. I joined clubs I had skipped before. I made friends with people I had ignored in favour of being available for my family. I discovered that when I wasn't constantly exhausted from maintaining everyone else's happiness, I actually enjoyed things. I actually had energy for my own life. Lily noticed first. She cornered me one evening in the hallway outside our bedrooms. "What's going on with you?" "What do you mean?" I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. "You're different. You're never around anymore. You don't help with anything. You barely talk to anyone at dinner." "I talk," I said. "I just don't feel the need to fill every silence." "It's weird," she said, crossing her arms. "Mom and Dad think you're going through something." "I am," I said. "I'm going through being 17 and having my own life." She didn't know how to respond to that. In our first life, I had always been a satellite to her sun, orbiting at a safe distance and reflecting her light. She had never had to consider what I might be like as my own solar system. "I don't like it," she said finally, and there was something vulnerable in her voice that made me pause. "You don't have to like it," I said, not unkindly, "but you do have to accept it." The months passed. I got a job at a bookstore, one I had wanted in my first life but turned down because the hours would conflict with my family's needs. I saved my money. I made plans that had nothing to do with anyone else. When college applications came around, I applied to schools across the country. Schools I had loved but never seriously considered because they were too far from home, and how could I leave when my family needed me? This time, I applied to all of them. I wrote essays about autonomy and growth and the courage it takes to choose yourself. I was accepted to my top choice, a university 2,000 miles away that offered me a full scholarship and a future that belonged only to me. My parents were shocked when I told them. We were at dinner, the four of us, and I simply said, "I got into Westfield. I'm going." "Westfield?" my father repeated. "That's across the country." "I know," I said, "but what about—" My mother trailed off, and I could see her searching for an argument that didn't sound selfish. "What about what?" I asked, genuinely curious to hear how she would finish that sentence. "What about being close to family?" she finally said. "You'll visit," I said, "and I'll come home for holidays, just like Lily will when she goes to college." "That's different," Lily said. "I'm going somewhere close." "Yes," I agreed. Yeah, and I'm not." The conversation continued, circular and frustrated, but I remained calm throughout. I had made my decision. It wasn't up for debate. I left for Westfield that August. My parents drove me to the airport, both of them still half convinced I would change my mind at the last minute. Lily came too, quieter than usual. At the security checkpoint, my mother hugged me tightly. "I don't understand why you have to go so far," she said, and her voice cracked. "I know," I said, and I meant it. She couldn't understand because she had never had to fight to be seen in her own family. But I need this. College was everything I had hoped for and more. I studied what I loved. I made friends who knew me as Isabella, not as Lily's sister or the responsible daughter. I discovered parts of myself I had buried so deep in my first life that I had forgotten they existed. I joined the university literary magazine. I travelled on spring breaks instead of going home. I dated casually, learning what it felt like to be pursued instead of pursuing, to be chosen instead of being the backup plan. I called home once a week, keeping the conversations light and brief. My parents always sounded slightly bewildered, as if they couldn't quite figure out how I had slipped out of the role they had assigned me. Lily's calls were less frequent, but more honest. She complained about classes and boys and our parents' expectations. I listened, but I didn't fix things for her anymore. I let her figure it out. The summer before the trip that had destroyed me in my first life, I didn't go home. I had an internship in the city where my university was located. It was a good opportunity, the kind I would have turned down before in favour of spending time with my family. This time, I took it without hesitation. My mother called when I told her. "But we barely see you anymore," she said, and there was genuine hurt in her voice. "We were planning a family trip this summer. We wanted everyone together." "A trip where?" I asked, though I already knew. "The coast, that place with the lighthouse we used to visit when you were small, remember?" I remembered. In my first life, I had remembered so hard it had broken me. "That sounds lovely," I said. "You should definitely go." "We want you there," she said. "I can't," I said. "I have the internship. But you'll have a great time. Take lots of photos." There was a long pause. Then, quietly, "It won't be the same without you." The words should have felt like victory, like proof that I mattered. But instead, they just felt like truth arriving too late. "Maybe not," I said, "but it will still be good. Lily will love it." After we hung up, I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time, thinking about the girl who had woken up alone in an empty house, thinking about how desperately she had wanted to hear those words, how she had died without ever hearing them. I was saving her. That's what this was. I was saving the girl I had been by refusing to become her again. The weeks leading up to their trip were marked by increasing tension in our phone calls. My father tried the practical approach, offering to pay for my flight home if I would just take time off the internship. My mother tried guilt, reminding me of all the family traditions I was breaking. Lily tried anger, accusing me of thinking I was too good for them now. I remained firm through all of it. "I hope you have a wonderful trip, I really do, but I'm not coming." The day they left for the coast, I received a group text. A photo of the three of them in the car, my father driving, my mother in the passenger seat turned back to smile at Lily. The caption read, "Off we go, wish you were here." I looked at that photo for a long time. In my first life, a nearly identical image had broken something in me that never fully healed. In this life, I felt only a distant, complicated sadness. I typed back, "Have fun, stay safe." Then I put my phone away and went to work. The trip happened without me. I saw evidence of it in the photos they posted and the messages they sent. The rental house, the beach at sunset, dinners at seafood restaurants. Everything I had imagined and been excluded from in my first life, now happening exactly as planned but without the power to hurt me. Because I had excluded myself first. I had chosen differently. I had rewritten the story before they could write me out of it. On the 5th day of their trip, my mother called. It was late evening and I was walking home from the library when my phone rang. "Isabella?" Her voice sounded different, smaller somehow. "Do you have a minute?" "Sure," I said, finding a bench and sitting down. "What's up?" "We're having a nice time," she said. "The house is beautiful. The weather's been perfect." "That's great. But it's quiet," she continued. "Your father and I were talking about it last night, about how different it feels without you here." I waited, not sure where this was going. "Lily mentioned it first, actually. She said something felt off, like we were missing a piece. And she was right." My mother's voice grew quieter. "We are missing a piece. We're missing you." The words hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction, vindication, proof that I had been right to pull away, to force them to notice my absence. But mostly I just felt tired. "I'm glad you're noticing," I said finally. "But Mum, I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this to punish anyone. I'm doing this because I have to build my own life." "I know," she said, and she sounded like she was crying. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. To see you." We talked for over an hour. She told me things I had never heard her say before, how she had taken me for granted because I was so capable, so steady, how she had focused on Lily because Lily seemed to need more attention, more guidance, how she had never questioned whether I was okay because I had always seemed fine. "I thought you were fine," she said. "I thought you were happy being the responsible one. I didn't realize I was asking you to be invisible." "I didn't realize it either," I said honestly. Not until it was too late. "Too late for what?" I almost told her. About the first life. About the morning I woke up alone. About dying from the accumulated weight of being forgotten. But I couldn't find the words. And maybe she didn't need to hear them anyway. "Too late to keep living that way," I said instead. After we hung up, I sat on that bench for a long time, watching the city move around me. People coming home from work, couples holding hands, students laughing on their way to somewhere I would never know. I had changed the story. I had refused to accept the ending that had been written for me. And it was working. My family was finally seeing me, finally understanding what they had almost lost. But also knew that change was slow. That one conversation, one realization wouldn't undo years of patterns. There would be backsliding. There would be moments when they forgot again, when they assumed, when they expected me to be the person I had been. And I would have to keep choosing myself, over and over, not as punishment or revenge, but as survival. The rest of their trip passed with more phone calls, more messages, more attempts to bridge the distance that had grown between us. Lily called to apologize for calling me selfish. My father sent a long email about how proud he was of my independence, even though it scared him. They were trying, and I appreciated it. But I also knew that trying wasn't the same as changing. That would take time, years maybe, and I would have to stay vigilant, stay firm in my boundaries, stay committed to the life I was building. When they returned from the trip, they wanted me to come home for a weekend. I told them that I would think about it. Eventually, I agreed, but I set conditions. I would come for 3 days, not a week. I would stay in a hotel, not in my childhood bedroom. I would have my own transportation, my own schedule. They agreed to everything without arguing, which was how I knew something had really shifted. That visit was strange, familiar and foreign at once. The house looked the same, but I felt different walking through it, like a guest instead of a resident, like someone visiting a place they used to know instead of a place that defined them. We had dinner together that first evening. My mother had cooked my favourite meal, which in itself was unusual enough to be notable. We sat around the table, the same table where I had spent so many dinners silently serving food and cleaning up and being background to Lily's spotlight, and I felt the weight of everything that had changed. Tell us about your internship, my father said, and he actually listened to my answer. He asked follow-up questions. He engaged with my life as if it mattered as much as Lily's achievements. Lily was quieter than usual, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. After dinner, she asked if I wanted to go for a walk. Just the two of us. We ended up at the park where we had played as children. It was twilight, the sky turning purple and gold, and we sat on the swings like we used to, though our feet touched the ground now. "I'm sorry," Lily said suddenly. I looked at her, surprised by the bluntness. "For what?" "For taking you for granted. For expecting you to always be there. For never questioning why you always said yes." She was quiet for a moment, pushing herself gently back and forth on the swing. "I didn't realize I was doing it." "That's not an excuse, just the truth. You were always so capable, so together. I thought that's just who you were." "It was who I made myself be," I said, "because I thought that's what I had to be to matter." "You always mattered," she said, and her voice cracked. "I just never told you that. I never showed you that." We sat there as the light faded, two sisters trying to find a new way to exist in each other's lives. It wasn't a complete healing, wounds that deep don't close in one conversation, but it was a start. The rest of that visit passed in similar moments. Small recognitions, tiny shifts, my parents making space for me in conversations, Lily asking about my life instead of just talking about hers. Everyone trying, in their imperfect ways, to see me clearly. I returned to school feeling something I had never felt about my family before: hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope of my first life, where I had convinced myself that if I just tried harder, loved more, sacrificed better, they would finally see me. But a quieter, steadier hope that maybe with time and effort from all of us, we could build something new. The years that followed were marked by this gradual rebuilding. I finished college with honours. I got a job I loved at a publishing house in the city. I built a life that was wholly, completely mine. My family remained part of that life, but they were no longer the centre of it. We talked regularly. We visited when it worked for everyone. We celebrated holidays together, but I also celebrated them with friends when I couldn't make it home. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, they learned to love me as I actually was instead of as they needed me to be. Lily and I grew closer in a way we had never been before. She called me for advice now, but she also called just to talk. She asked about my life with genuine interest. She introduced me to her friends as her sister, not as an afterthought, but as someone she was proud to know. My parents learned to ask instead of assume, to respect my boundaries instead of pushing against them, to celebrate my choices even when those choices took me further from home. 3 years after the rebirth, I published my first novel. It was about a woman who learned to disappear and then had to learn to exist again. It was about family and forgetting and the courage it takes to choose yourself. My family came to the launch party, all of them. They sat in the front row as I read from my book, and when I looked up, I saw tears on my mother's face. Afterward, she hugged me tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, "and I'm so sorry it took me so long to show you that." "You're showing me now," I said. "That's what matters." 5 years after the rebirth, we took another family trip to the coast. This time, it was my idea. I suggested it during a phone call, almost as an experiment, to see if I could return to that place without it destroying me, to see if we could create new memories that would overwrite the old ones. We rented the same house, walked the same beaches, ate at the same restaurants. But everything was different because I was different, because they were different, because we had all learned that family isn't something you take for granted. It's something you choose every day to show up for. One evening, Lily and I walked along the beach at sunset. The sky was on fire with colour, and the waves crashed in their eternal rhythm, and everything felt both familiar and new. "Do you remember that trip they almost took without you?" she asked suddenly. I looked at her, surprised. We had never talked about it directly. "You know about that?" I figured it out eventually. Little things Mom said, the way they both got weird when I mentioned family trips. She was quiet for a moment. "I think about it sometimes, about how close we came to losing you." "You didn't lose me," I said, "but we could have, if you hadn't pulled away when you did, if you had just kept giving and giving until there was nothing left." She stopped walking and turned to face me. "I'm glad you fought for yourself. Even though it was hard, even though it hurt, I'm glad you survived us." The words settled into my chest, unexpected and profound. She understood. Maybe not everything, but enough. "I'm glad too," I said. We walked back to the house as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and I felt something I had never felt in either life until now. Complete peace. Not the peace of resignation or the peace of exhaustion. The peace of someone who had fought for their worth and won, who had refused to accept the ending written for them and had written a new one instead. That night, lying in bed with the sound of waves through the window, I thought about the girl who had woken up alone in an empty house. The girl who had died quietly, forgotten even in her ending. The girl who had needed saving so desperately that the universe had bent reality to give her another chance. I had saved her, not by getting revenge, not by making them suffer, but by refusing to disappear again, by insisting on my own existence with every choice, every boundary, every time I chose myself over their comfort. And, in saving myself, I had given them the chance to see what they had been missing, to love me not as a convenience or an afterthought, but as a whole person worthy of being remembered. Some stories end in fire and fury. This one ended in quiet recognition, in a family learning to see, in a woman learning that she deserved to be seen. The rebirth wasn't the miracle. The real miracle was choosing every single day to stay visible, to stay present in my own life, to refuse to be forgotten again. I never told them about the first life, about the death that led to this second chance. It remained my secret, my burden, my gift, but they felt the weight of it in the changes I made. They sensed something they couldn't name, but instinctively understood they had almost lost forever. And that was enough. Years continued to pass. I published more books. I travelled extensively. I fell in love, got my heart broken, fell in love again. I built a rich, full quad that belonged completely to me. My family remained part of that life, but they were no longer its definition. We grew together and apart and together again in the natural rhythm of people who love each other, but also have their own lives to live. Lily got married. I stood beside her as her maid of honour. And this time, there was no bitterness, only joy for her happiness and pride in the relationship we had rebuilt. My parents grew older. We talked about them eventually moving closer to me, and the fact that they considered it, that they saw my life as worthy of orbiting instead of expecting me to always come home, meant more than they would ever know. I never forgot the girl who died alone. She lived in me always, a reminder of what happens when you love others more than you love yourself, when you make yourself so small that you finally disappear. But I also celebrated the woman I had become, the one who had learned that survival sometimes means disappointing people, that being loved means being seen, that you cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot exist in someone else's shadow without eventually ceasing to exist at all. The story of my rebirth wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about reclamation, about taking back a life that had been slowly stolen by people who loved me but didn't know how to see me, about teaching them and myself that love without presence is just a word, that family without recognition is just biology. I taught them to remember me, and in doing so, I taught myself that I was worth remembering. That was my revenge, and my peace, and my triumph. The woman who had woken up alone in an empty house had needed the world to change for her. The woman I became changed the world herself. And I lived. Fully, completely, undeniably. Not in the shadow of what I should have been. Not in the margins of someone else's story. But in the clear, bright centre of my own life where I had always deserved to be. Remembered, seen, chosen, finally and forever mine.